The History Channel didn't say why the PawnStars show ended in 2025, but it did. Corey, his own son, said it was all bogus and moved to Mexico for good. Rick's mom is suing him because she says he stole millions from her while she was in a coma in the hospital. Rick is trying to rebuild his life with something called PawnStars 2.0 after losing his father, mother, and son in just a few years. But some in the business claim he's actually simply trying to avoid going bankrupt. Rick Harrison was born on March 27, 1965, in Lexington, North Carolina. His family history was already heavy on his mind, and it would stay that way for years. Richard Benjamin Harrison Jr., his father, was a rigorous Navy guy, and his mother, Joanne Rue Harrison, tried to keep everything together at home. Rick's older sister, Sherry, died when she was 6. The family felt a quiet hole after that loss. The Navy deployed Rick's dad to San Diego in 1967, when Rick was only 2 years old. The whole family had to move again. It was the beginning of a life full of packing and unpacking and never remaining long enough to feel at home. Every time they moved, they had to go to a new school and meet new people. And little by bit, it made Rick into a person who learned how to adapt quickly. Things got more difficult when he turned 8. The seizures started then. He would lose control, and the events would happen around once a month. Sometimes his muscles hurt so much afterward that he stayed in bed for days. He lay still in a dark room trying to get better as other youngsters played outdoors. The opportunity to play, make friends, or feel normal kept going by as time went on. But something unexpected happened when I was stuck in bed for a long time. He took up several books. He kept taking them up until reading became his whole universe. He subsequently remarked that reading saved his life since it kept him awake, filled the stillness, and gave him something to cherish when his body wouldn't comply. He also found a show called The Great Brain during those years. He read all 10 volumes as if they had been written specifically for him. Tom Fitzgerald, the primary character, was a smart lad from Utah who always had a plan. Rick appreciated how Tom thought, how he sought for angles and chances, and how he pushed himself when things went wrong. Rick started to feel something like that growing inside of him. He began to worry about money, business, and how to make things happen even when it appeared like the world was against him. The books taught him how to look at difficulties as puzzles and how to be honest about the implications of his actions while still being ambitious. Those stories helped him find his way in a childhood that felt out of his control. But he was still a kid dealing with anguish and anger. And by the time he was 14, he was using marijuana. It made him feel like he was getting away, but only for a little while. That same year, his parents sent him to treatment. He had counseling sessions every day where the counselors told him about the hazards he was taking. It was hard for him to sit in those rooms, but it made him face himself in a manner he hadn't previously. He started to realize that every option had an effect on the next. There was a price to pay for every shortcut. He began to see discipline as something he required if he ever wanted to have a true chance at making his life better. School was hard again. He missed so many days because of the seizures that he couldn't catch up. He thought there was no use in staying by the time he was in 9th or 10th grade. He left school because they weren't geared up to handle kids with problems like his in the late 1970s. It wasn't because he failed. He had to take a different path in life, and he started making that path, music, quickly. He was living in Las Vegas and working hard at swap fairs by the early 1980s. That was when he became the first adolescent in town to sell phony Gucci bags. He acquired them for about $10 in New York's Chinatown and sold them for about $100. He made $2,000 on some weekends. That was a big deal for a teenager. He felt the excitement of making something out of nothing. He also realized that every thriving market draws in competitors. His profits went down as cheaper goods from Asia started coming in. He didn't give up. Instead, he drove to the Los Angeles garment area and discovered a fresh lane. This time, the jeans were faux Jordache. He bought them for approximately $15 and sold them for about $40 or $50. Money started flowing in again once he changed gears. He became someone who was willing to change. Life changed again about that time. When he was 17, his girlfriend Kim got pregnant. They had a hard time at first, but they were happy to welcome their son Corey on April 27, 1983, just a few days after Rick turned 18. He made the decision to marry Kim. People in Las Vegas talked about their young marriage all the time. They had another son, Adam, 2 years later. But the stress of being a young father and Rick's constant work caused the marriage to fall apart. They had a divorce in 1985, and Rick got custody of both boys. That choice made him work even harder because he now had 2 lives to take care of. Then came the year that made the whole Harrison family start over. In April 1981, a real estate crash in Kentucky destroyed all Rick's parents had worked for. They only had $5,000 left, which was intended to be enough to pay for a move, rent, food, and whatever else came up. They went to Las Vegas in the hopes that the city would help them start over. Las Vegas used to be rougher, smaller, and nothing like the glittering tourist mecca it is now. The Harrisons came knowing no one in the music business. But they opened the gold and silver coin shop a few weeks later. It was only 300 square feet, which was hardly enough room for customers to get in. Rick worked there during the day and took back cars at night. Some days, they had a hard time making even $100, but they kept coming. During those years, the city also had a weird law. There couldn't be any new pawn shop licenses until the population reached 250,000. There were about 25,000 people living there in 1981. City leaders thought it would take decades to reach that figure. Rick didn't want to wait. He called the city statistician every week to find out how many people lived there. He waited this long for 8 years. Finally, in April 1989, the number reached 250,000. Rick ran to Municipal Hall to get the license. From that point on, everything changed. In the same month, the gold and silver pawn shop opened at 713 Las Vegas Boulevard. It was still modest, but it was theirs. The store made money in its first year. By the middle of the 1990s, it was becoming a well-known place in the area, one deal at a time. The numbers climbed as the years went by. The store was lending out roughly $3 million a year by 2005. Most loans were between $75 and $150. They made roughly $700,000 a year in interest. They were in charge of thousands of trades, which included everything from shattered jewels to rare artifacts. It was an amazing rise from the time the family came to Las Vegas with only $5,000 and a strong desire to start over. Rick Harrison spent years trying to influence how people thought about pawn shops. He wanted to get them out of the dark alleyway image that made people think of trouble instead of business. In 2003, he was on Insomniac with Dave Attell for a short time, and that little bit of exposure provided the store a boost. He preserved that flame and continued going. He went to production companies again and over again, telling them that he wanted a family story set in a real business. He came up with something that was both honest and fun. He first chose the name Pawning History, but someone from Left Field Pictures looked at it and proposed a shorter name. PawnStars was crisp and catchy, and the wordplay made people smile. The History Channel finally said yes after years of knocking on doors. The first episode of the show aired on July 19, 2009. That moment impacted Rick's life forever. His determination did more than just bring a production to life. It transformed the way millions of people regarded his business. The show got off to a quick start. It first aired on July 19, 2009, and the ratings went up like they were supposed to. By January 2011, one episode had 7 million viewers, making it the most watched show on History Channel at the time. That year, it became the second most popular reality show in the US, with 7.6 million viewers per episode, exactly after Jersey Shore. People liked the mix of history, humor, and family, music, tension. That blend of things made the show go around the world. It was soon on TV in 150 countries and in 38 languages. It turned into a cultural tsunami instead of just a show. The gold and silver pawn store altered after the show got popular. Before PawnStars, the shop only had about 70 to 100 customers a day. By 2010, that amount had grown to over 1,000 every day. Then, by 2013, it had grown to more than 5,000. It became a stop in Las Vegas for tourists who wanted to see a little bit of the spectacle they saw at home. Rick opened an express pawn counter the same year to handle the throng. He employed about 30 new people and invested $400,000 to make the showroom bigger, till it was roughly 15,000 square feet. Even though there was a lot of room, filming restrictions said that the main cast could only operate the counter while the cameras weren't on since clients required privacy. The store stayed open, and people kept visiting. The chemistry between the cast made the show come to life. There were 3 generations behind the counter, and each one had a different vibe. Everyone knew Richard Harrison as the old man. He kept an eye on things until he retired in 2017. Rick had been working at the store since he was 13, therefore he was the most important person there. Big Hose, whose real name is Corey, started working there when he was 9 and ultimately became the manager. Austin Russell, who everyone called Chumley, joined when he was 21. He brought the humor and crazy times that made the fights less serious. The simmering fights between Rick and Corey and the baiting of Chumley felt real since they were based on real events. That link kept people interested for more than 10 years. Rick didn't just make money off of the cameras. He did some of his biggest business on the show. One of the craziest things he did was buy 12 original drawings from Maurice Sachs where the wild things are for $250,000. The illustrations from the mid-1960s were rare and important works of children's literature. Rick seemed astonished when he bought them and claimed he couldn't believe he was doing it. He still realized how significant that art was, though. Another huge buy was a silver collection that weighed 3,372 ounces. Rick paid $111,000 for it. He said on the broadcast that silver is more than just a gorgeous metal. It goes through phones, laptops, and TVs because it is the best way to move power. The collection was worth something in silver and was in demand in the industrial world since silver was worth $25 to $30 an ounce. The 1932 Lincoln Roadster came next, and it cost $95,000. There were just 112 of those cars manufactured. The model was a crown gem of its time and might sell for as much as $170,000 at auction. Rick understood exactly what he was looking at. He looked at the engineering, the fact that it was rare, and the price it would be in the future. He also spent $90,000 on a Les Paul guitar. Mary Ford, Les Paul's wife, used to own this guitar. The tale behind the item made it worth more than a regular vintage guitar because it was connected to one of the first musicians. Rick saw it as a piece of history that was still alive. He couldn't bring the Robosaurus home with him. It was 45 feet tall, weighed 31 tons, and breathed flames like a monster made of metal. It cost $1 million. Corey joked that it was a little too much for him to spend. It was more of a show than a product, but seeing it on the show was one of those experiences that people never forgot. Rick had a long string of marriages in his personal life, away from the showroom and the cameras. He married Kim Harrison for the first time in 1982. He was just 17. She was pregnant with Corey, and in 1983 their second son, Adam, was born. They had a divorce in 1985 because they were too young and not ready. Later, Kim reported that Rick placed work above their home life and that they grew apart until they hardly communicated. In January 2024, their son Adam died after an overdose of fentanyl. He was 39 years old. Later, Rick spoke up about the drug issue in public. In 1986, he married Tracy Harrison for the second time. They stayed married until 2011. Jake was their only child. Tracy kept things to herself, but documents reveal that the marriage drifted apart over time. Rick was always either filming or operating the store, and that distance got too big. They got a divorce without any fights or drama. Jake kept close to both of them and made his own spot in the performance. In 2013, Rick married Deanna Burden for the second time. Danny Coker wedded them at Laguna Beach. Rick became the stepfather of Serena, Tiana, and Marissa, her 3 daughters, from this marriage. They were together until 2020. Court papers indicated that their preferences and opinions had gotten so far apart that they couldn't stay married. They worked things out on their own. Rick later informed TMZ that both sides agreed to the breakup. Even after they got a divorce, he stayed in touch with her daughters. In 2021, he married Amanda Palmer for the fourth time, however, they only stayed together until 2023. There wasn't much information, there wasn't much publicity, and there wasn't any public conflict. The marriage slowly fell apart and dissolved in less than 2 years. In March 2025, Music, Rick made an announcement about something new. He was going to marry Angie Palashkin, a certified nurse from Las Vegas. He said they got along great and had never had a fight. They began going out in early 2024. He asked her to marry him at a winery in Casablanca, Chile, with a 6.5-carat pear-shaped ring from his own pawn shop. He also stated he wasn't sure if he wanted to sign a prenup for Music, even though he hadn't done so in any of his other marriages. He thought that marriage should continue forever, even though he knew that things don't always go as planned. Not long after losing his son Adam, he got engaged. It was a peculiar blend of sadness and hope in his life. On March 9, 2016, the regular, tranquil rhythm of a day in Las Vegas was broken when police showed up at Chumley's house with a warrant for a sexual assault charge lodged by a worker at the gold and silver pawn shop. What they found inside changed everything. Things that shouldn't have been there were in every room. Officers found 12 guns hidden about the house. There were a lot of handguns, revolvers, rifles, and shotguns, and some of them were still loaded. They also uncovered a lot of ammo, drug paraphernalia, marijuana, and methamphetamine. Most of it was locked up in a vault on the main level, although there were little amounts of drugs and clothes in other rooms. Chumley later maintained that everything was for personal use, but the law was plain. People who used controlled substances couldn't legally own guns. The officers took everything, then. They also got a warrant for a blood sample because they thought that drug use might have affected what happened during the claimed encounter. After the raid was over, the legal trouble started. Chumley suddenly had 20 felony accusations against him, including drug possession and weapons violations. He spent one night in jail before paying a $62,000 bond. Chesnoff, his lawyer, sought to fight back by saying that the search was illegal, but the evidence was too strong. By May 2016, Chumley knew that the only option to stay out of jail was to accept a plea offer. He agreed to plead guilty to a felony firearms charge and a misdemeanor attempted drug possession charge. The judge gave him 3 years of probation, therapy, and the return of everything that was taken during the raid. The felony would go away from his record if he stayed clean until 2019. Only a misdemeanor would be left. He might go to state prison for up to 5 years if he made a mistake even once. The History Channel didn't say anything through all of this. PawnStars kept playing without saying anything. People in the business said that the network was pulling away to safeguard the brand. Even though the sexual assault claim was dismissed, the number of criminal charges rendered it too dangerous for the public to talk about. For months, Chumley didn't show up to events or interviews, and fans noted the unexpected lack of activity. The network just kept filming. The program went on, but one of its stars had to deal with the aftermath off-screen. Then another blow hit. Richard Harrison, who was known to millions as the Old Man, died on June 25, 2018, at the age of 77 after a long battle with Parkinson's disease. People who watched him over the years saw him get weaker, with a softer voice and slower movements. Rick told everyone the news in a way that moved them all. He said that he had lost a buddy, a father, a teacher, and more. The History Channel made its own homage, thanking him for the charm and expertise that helped convert a modest pawn shop into a famous Las Vegas institution. He spent his last years at home with his family. And when the show came back after he died, the sadness was still there. Rick tried to keep going, but viewers could see how sad he was, especially considering they had worked together since 1989. Richard made a shocking choice that surprised supporters a year before he died. He changed his will in 2017 and didn't include his youngest son, Christopher. The document made it apparent that he loved Christopher but had decided not to help him. There was no rationale given. Rick, who was in charge, said it was a private problem. Some people thought Christopher was already financially solid, while others thought there had been a big distance between them. Joseph and Joanne were chosen as the people who would get the money. The update raised a lot of issues, especially since it was done so close to Richard's last year. The problems in the family got worse in 2022. Rick's mother, Joanne Harrison, sued him, saying that he tricked her into giving up her 51% ownership in the pawn store while she was in the hospital years ago. The lawsuit alleged she was in a coma at Valley Hospital in 2000 or 2001 and didn't know what she was signing. She said that she never got a clear picture of her equity, cash, or silver holdings. She also talked about a strange $3 million loan that she thought was taken out with her collateral. Her filing portrayed a heartbreaking image of a family that was having trouble trusting each other, dealing with loss, and healing old wounds after Richard's death. Then the catastrophe got worse. Rick's son Adam was found dead at a Las Vegas music guest house on January 19, 2024. He had been residing there after getting out of jail. He was just 39. The Clark County coroner said that the person died because they accidentally took too much fentanyl and methamphetamine. Both chemicals were present in amounts that may kill. Adam had been addicted for years, going in and out of treatment while Rick tried to help him get back on track. But relapse kept coming back. And toward the end, he was locked in a loop he couldn't get out of. His death made a lot of people sad and put his family back in the spotlight as the country focused on the growing fentanyl issue. Rick was honest about how the loss affected him. He claimed that losing a child was the worst thing that could happen. He said a few times that he wanted to put Adam in rehab. He would stay sober for long each time he came out, but then he would slip again. Rick stated he never thought it would end this way. People who had been through the same trauma were moved by his honesty. A lot of parents could relate to what he said. The interviews were a gentle reminder of how addiction can tear a family apart from the inside. Rick took on a new position when Adam died. He started to speak out about the fentanyl epidemic, pushing for better border control and harsher punishment for anyone who sells the narcotic. He claimed that fentanyl was crossing borders with almost no trouble and that the country needed to do better. He even claimed that anyone who sold fentanyl should get life in prison since they were spreading poison. He said that the previous government had done a good job of enforcing the border, saying that crossings had reduced by 98%. His voice added to a burgeoning national debate, forcing him into political talks he had never been a part of previously. Then, in February 2025, things changed again. After 16 years and 23 seasons, PawnStars went on an indefinite break. The deal with the History Channel ended, and there were no talks about renewing it. Rick said that the show didn't have an ongoing contract and that there were no plans to film again. Fans all over the world were shocked. The last season ran through April 2025. The long-running show that had been a part of reality TV history has stopped all of a sudden. No one knew how long it would last or if it would ever come back. Corey Harrison added another twist months later. After the filming was done in June 2025, he said he was moving to Tulum, Mexico, and would not be back on the show. He replied that they had all been acting and that it was time for him to stop acting. He lived a peaceful life in Tulum and started to think about launching a barbecue restaurant. His leaving took away one of the show's familiar faces and made the future even less certain. But Rick didn't stop dreaming. He started talking about a new version he called PawnStars 2.0. He talked to a number of networks, such as HBO. He was still hopeful, even though nothing was certain. He intended to give the brand a new look and maybe a new cast. For supporters who have been around for a long time, even the thought of it gave them hope. Rick's net worth was around $8 to $9 million by 2025. He made his money through real estate, restaurants, goods, appearances at events, and of course, the store that now attracts thousands of people each year. He got paid more than $1,000 for some events. His book, Licensed to Pawn, sold very well. He developed a huge economic empire that showed how far he could go, even after many losses and controversies. Still, the final several years were hard on him. Joanne, his mother, died in 2024 at the age of 85. He lost his father and then his son before that. He was also sued for his mother's estate. The grief built up slowly, one loss after another. But he continued going, attempting to combine his grief with his duties and carrying on the family history even when so much around him was changing.